sponsors for educational opportunity. And one thing I saw in the bio, and like what was described to me by some of the teachers who had told me to apply, was that I would learn things that I wouldn't normally learn in school. So like that was hard. That was like hard for me to understand, because the question that really ran in my head was, why is school not teaching me everything that I need to learn? And I went through the same thing that Haby went through, except I got a lower grade. I thought I really bodied that diagnosis. It's really a shock to understand that there's a different type of education that it really depends on like the color of your skin, and it's just hard to really take that in.
Oh, I wanted to add on, well, like build off of my experience. I realized there was like inequality within the educational system when there was a student that went to the same school as me. Like she went to the Moxie Prep as well, but you know, like we were in the middle school, and when we were applying for high schools, it could either be you go to the DP high school, or you go like you apply for other high schools. Now she applied for another high school. I think it was in Lower Manhattan. Spence, that's the name. It was in Spence, and I was like, that was a great opportunity. And you know, that's when I saw like two separate, like I compared my life to hers, because when I would hear what she went through, I was like, wow. Like there would be instances, like even recently, she would say like their teachers gave them the week off before tests because they feel as if, oh, they need that rest. Meanwhile, for us, we don't get a break. It's like it's straight into testing, back to back to back, like AP, like all those is back to back to back, and it's crazy because it's like they get a break, and then she's telling me how, you know, because you know they complain about stress and they get that week off, when it's like us, it's like it doesn't matter. It's like you're gonna get the test, we're gonna take it, and that's when I realized, I was like, oh wow, like that's a complete difference. Like we're going through like stress wise, we're like stressing ourselves out. Meanwhile, you guys have the whole week. Like she goes to places like Machu Picchu. She went to Machu Picchu. Like she had time to go to Machu Picchu. Meanwhile, we're in school. Like situations like that. That's when I realized, I was like, our lives were like completely different. Like it was the same. Like it was the same when we were in middle school to that transfer to the high school, different paths. And that's when I realized it was that.
Yeah, it really goes to Yacine's letter. It's, you know, 5 miles apart but completely different worlds. And so just to, you know, speak a little bit on, you know, my experience. Me and Yacine go to the same high school, and I'm from the Bronx, and you know, I came from, you know, a diverse middle school, and I went into a very segregated high school that's majority white. And the transition from going to a diverse middle school to a segregated high school and not seeing anyone that looked like you, and talking about your experiences and how they're totally different, except, you know, same age, you know, but 5 miles apart, and yet completely different lives. And so you do question why things are like that. And I actually wanted to direct this question to Brianna. You go to Midwood, right? And so what's really interesting about this particular high school, it's around 4,000 students. All right, it's around 4,000 students, and yet I believe it's one of the most diverse schools in the city. And so I just wanted to actually ask you the question of, how do you feel the academic environment is in school? Because, you know, I talk a lot about integration, and when you have a diverse student body, typically it leads to a better educational experience. But I didn't want to even hear of the high school Midwood, but when I did, I did want to hear about your experience and how you think the climate impacts your education.
I think it could go both ways. Because it's diverse, you have a lot of student body. A lot of the student body is open-minded to like issues on race or culture, and then there's another spectrum of students who are closed-minded towards the situation, and they have their conservative views on things. And in many situations, I don't feel like I'm not represented, because my school is about 76% minority students. but sometimes when I'm in my advanced placement courses, I realize that I'm one of the few women of color or person of color, and surrounded by faces that don't look like mine and personalities that don't exactly match mine. I often find myself having to filter the things I say and the things I do. Not necessarily because I don't want to be myself, but because I'm sort of afraid that people can't relate to me. But in other courses, I feel like remedial courses, or even if walking in the hallways, I have friends, obviously, who look like me, but I realized that the more advanced classes you take, the less I saw of people that, let's say, not only match my intellect, but also match my thought, my culture, and my ethnicity and race.
So, I actually wanted to move on with the conversation a bit and do talk about this idea of college readiness. We talked about standardized testing a lot. We talked about how there's so many different expectations for minority students, for low-income students. And I actually wanted to first direct this question to Kareem, but you guys could all answer it afterwards. You go to Eagle Academy, right? So it's majority, it's an all-boys school. Is it? Can you remind me of the demographics again? Okay, so my question to you is, how do you think your high school experience is preparing you for college? And is there any reserves you have? Like how do you think teachers talk to you about college?
Well, the way my school really prepared me for college is just basically, they really set up my resume. I got a lot of opportunities that aren't really at other schools. It ranges from academic programs like SEO to traveling abroad. I got my band from Ecuador right here. It was like a culture shock, and it's like they teach me to be open to the world, just to be like, cause they know that since we're mainly black, like we're gonna be in a place where we're gonna be on like predominantly white campuses, and they want us to be ready for that, and that's really like what they have prepared me for.
Anyone else also wants to push on the answer? If not, it's fine too.
I like to pitch in about that question. Basically, the Moxie prep is mostly minority. Like it is minorities. Like there isn't like a white person or Asian or it's just But what I'm trying to say is they prepare us for college in a sense where they tell us like what do we need, the requirements, like oh we need this, like these type of grades, oh look into these type of schools, oh be ready to like be prepared for what we're gonna see when we get to senior year. But my thing is like for like the outside world where we're gonna go to like PWIs, like predominantly white institutions like colleges. I feel as if we're not so much prepared because it's like I feel like as if our school, and I spoke to this like about one of my friends, and it was like a funny connection because she was like, oh like our school, the Moxie Prep is like preparing us, we're like, it was around Thanksgiving, so she was like, we're like the turkey. There's like seasoning, there's like different type of aspects, and then we go into one oven, and that oven is HBCUs. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So it's like they're preparing us to like go like be comfortable in HBCUs, as in like we're so comfortable around people like us that is like we're not prepared to, let's say we get into like a PWI and we don't know how to interact, then we feel uncomfortable. It's like in that type of situations, like preparing us for college is like we're not so much prepared because we don't know how to interact in those environments. So it's like that's the situation.
So I also want to mention we do also want questions from the audience. So after this particular question, I do want to take, so just keep that in the back of your head and come up with questions, because in a little bit we would like to ask the audience for that. So we talked about the issues of our schools. We spent the whole day kind of going at what we really, what our experiences are and the hardships that come with it and the successes. And I actually wanted to ask the question of, what what advice, so we asked them to whom it should concern. This question, I guess, is who is the concerned part? So if you could, give advice to the educators, to the teachers, to the politicians that are in the room, to better our education, to better our schools, what is it that you think they should focus on?
I would say the person that should be, to whom it should concern, teach students to love what they're learning before you put a pencil in their hand and tell them to take an exam. The teachers and the whole system.
Well, I think it's understanding that learning is more than passing a test. Because there's a lot of teachers, they're very influential to students' lives, but they're not able to make as much as an impact when they're focusing on having the student pass a test and do better on the standardized test rather than teaching them to learn. So I just think that it's basically realizing that learning is not passing standardized tests.
For me, my advice, to teachers. My advice to teachers is because I spoke about this also in my poem, where it's I went through the same thing, I know what you're going through. But at the end of the day, we did not go to the same high school. Your hours and my hours are totally different. My thing is, don't say that to a student if you know that is not the same. It's not the same. When you compare the two, you didn't have to spend those long hours, AP classes back to back. It was not like that. And plus, based on us, me as a minority compared to and the teachers who say that it's alright, there's a situation that happened where it was there was a teacher who told me that, and they were basically saying, basically they were telling me to choose between my academics or my sports. And my thing is, it got me very mad because you're privileged enough to say that, but me as a minority, my academics always come first. I don't have a decision, it's always my academics. And now they said, you could say that because you have more opportunities than me based on the skin that you're in at the end of the day. And now what I'm trying to say as for teachers, you have to understand automatically you can't just say, you have to admit to yourself I don't understand. You have to admit to the student I don't understand, let me understand. And let them know that honestly, I want to know how you're going through this. Even try to talk to them, because I feel as if some teachers, not all, some teachers, they try to put on the student I know what you're going through, you need to do this. Try to understand the student first before putting things on them. That's all.
What I would say to answer that question is because the issue of school and integration and educational equity is so vast, there's so much that needs to be done. But one thing I would say to just the city, especially New York City, since we are the most segregated city in the United States, is that they need to actively find Black and brown academically talented students. It is the job of the city that if you know that the city is segregated and that people cannot have opportunities because of the incomes they have, it is your job to help them get those opportunities. And that means, if that means integrating the schools, actually integrate the schools. Don't just put Black people and white people together and say, okay, here's your integration. No, that's actually learning from each other and making sure that ideas can bounce off of each other. A lot of the times when you see Black and brown kids who graduate from high schools or Black and brown kids who make it through college, it's wow, you're amazing, you're an exception. And that should not be a case. I know so many people who were undocumented, who are just like me, who are just as brilliant as me, who didn't get the same opportunities as me. I know so many kids who were Black and brown students just because of income, couldn't have the same opportunities, as I did, and I find that to be absurd. There's no reason why if there are people who are just as academically talented as me and just as motivated as me, they shouldn't have the same doors open to them. So that's what I would say.
My to whom it would concern would be to teachers. Whitney once said this, we see you guys more than we see our own family sometimes. So you guys expect so much from us, for studying for AP tests, for studying for tests, participating in class. You guys take a lot of emotional stress from us, and physical sometimes too. So like the only thing like I would ask for my teachers is to be passionate about what you're doing. If you're not passionate about education or education reform, please do not come into a public school system. Do not come into a public school system and try to teach us. Leave all of your problems at home and like. I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, how are you gonna affect change like in students? Like you're here to inspire us. You're not here to bring us down. So if you're not passionate about what you're doing, please do not come and like be involved